Finding empowerment, embracing layers, yeah. We get to feel.
Hello, Melissa Crook here on the Feel Podcast today. Welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about, we're taking that step. Last week we talked about our layers and embracing our layers. And I want to remind you that as you listen to these episodes each Tuesday, that when I do these individual ones, I'm giving you an inside look, a snippet, some steps. And if you find that you're needing more help and guidance, just know that I've got resources for that. I talk about that each week, but just a reminder that if you find you're trying to put these things into play on your own and you're having some trouble, you're getting tripped up, let's talk. Go to that contact form at embracinglayers.com. Let's see how I can support you. But we're going to move into what I really consider that next step after you have really created some practices and consistencies that allow you to embrace your layers. Remember, you're staying curious. You're allowing yourself to feel your emotions, and you're giving yourself space and room with curiosity rather than judgment. And go back and listen to that if you need a refresher. It's under 10 minutes long. If you want to, have a pickup where we left off. If you're remembering it, great. And sometimes this step we're going to talk about today, sometimes this is just the one people need to get them back on track. Sometimes this simple step is like, oh yeah, that's who I am. That's what fills my cup. That's how I want to feel. I just needed something to remind me to get myself back on track. So today we're going to talk about who am I? How do I want to feel? And what nourishes me. And this really starts with, and if you go to our show notes for every podcast, you'll find this PDF in there that asks yourself some key questions. And it's going to be in the show notes again, but it's always easy to find. This is something that I always pass out when I speak in person at engagements. It's something that I share very widely when I'm a guest on other people's podcasts, because it is that really kind of a simple place to start. To really start thinking about you in terms of you and who you are versus you based on all the things you do, or you based on what other people have told you you are or how they view you. This allows you to really come home to you. And it's okay if when you ask yourself these questions, the first initial response is, gosh, I don't really know. I haven't thought about that in a long time, or no one's ever asked me that. That's okay. This is not a sprint. It is a lifelong journey. It's a marathon type approach. And so the first important step is to start asking yourself, and then take that time. Take some time each day, whether it's with your journaling practice or when you're on a walk, or meditating, or doing a workout, or just having some quiet time to think about, what feels refreshing to me today? Or what character traits came up in me today that were really from me when I showed up in that situation, when I responded to that scenario? It's really there to get you to start thinking. So don't concern yourself too much if you don't have answers right away. This is not about being right or wrong. It's about getting to know you and taking the time you need to do that. And like I've said before, I can support you in that with our additional resources if you need that. I'm right here if you need me. But give yourself grace and be patient with yourself, and and really think of it as a contemplative activity to get you start thinking. And over time, you'll find, as you make it a more consistent practice, that the answers come to you more easily, because you have been considerate. You have been more present with it. You have been paying attention and thinking about it more intentionally. So let's start with at the beginning. Where do we start? So you know this if you've listened to me for a while, but when I have guests on here, I always introduced our guests by their character traits, because I think one of the biggest identity issues we run into is that we ground our identity in places that are fleeting, and they're not based on who we are, they're based on what we do. And titles and roles, that those things change over time. Even if they're wonderful things, they change over time. I'm always going to be a mom, but my kids have not lived at home with me for a while now. So that role has shifted a lot and has changed a lot. So that's an example of, so even if that role or title remains, it will still shift over time and not be the same. And so that's why being grounded in who we are is so important. So when you have those shifts, whether you see them coming or they surprise you, you're already grounded and know who you are. And that will also evolve and change over time. But if you continue to ask yourself that question and continue to identify those ways that you show up, those ways that you are created to be, those ways that you become when you learn something new, then you'll always have that as your foundation. So I start this with our people when I work with them too, not just on the podcast when I'm having conversations, but when I'm working with people in speaking, when I'm working with people in workshops. I talk about it on the online course when I'm working with people one-on-one. This is a very key, important question because in order to prioritize yourself, you need to know who you are and what it is that feels honoring to you and resource filling to you. So character traits think of them as adjectives because people are throwing like character traits, like who you are. How would you describe yourself? So for example, I describe myself smart, passionate, outgoing, impatient, curious. Those are some character traits that I would use to describe myself. And so you notice they're not things that I do. They are things that I am. It's who you are. So hopefully that kind of triggers and the notion in your head of like, oh, that's what she means. So I find it helpful to give examples, and a lot of times that will get it going. And I want you to remember, I don't want you asking other people how they would describe you. I want this to come from you. Now, if you come up with a list and you want to share it with others later and get their feedback, that's fine. But I don't want you going, because sometimes when I ask this of people, oh, well, let me talk to my daughters or my sister or my coworkers or my best friend or my partner or my husband or my wife. No. I want you to ask yourself who you are and be able to answer that for you. Because we also many times live in a world as women where because of what we've been told about showing up for everybody else and prioritizing everybody else, we sometimes will allow others to describe us and decide who we are. And if we're feeling a little angsty, that's letting you know that maybe it's time to look inward and maybe determine, are those ways they describe me, are those actually true? Or are those just the ways I've showed up for them and what I've allowed? So really get curious about this as you're asking yourself this question, because it's very important to know, and also accept when things shift or another one gets added. And because also I think it's important to remember about character traits, different ones will show up in different scenarios and different ways and different seasons and different situations and different relationships. So being open to the expansion of those and knowing that these aren't things that you are 100% of the time. Maybe it's only 5% of the time, but it's a part of who you are. So character traits, who you are, not what you do. And then the next question to ask, and there's no hurry on this. Like if you need to take a month or to really figure out who you are, sit with that for a while. But once you've identified some things and added some things, then start thinking about, okay, so I've identified who I am. I'm comfortable or feel good, or that feels, comfortable is not even the right word. That feels aligned with me. Like I feel really settled, content with that. What are 5 activities that nourish me? What fills my cup? What are some things that I can do daily to make sure I'm making time for that? Whether it's 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. There are some of these things that you aren't always going to do every day. For instance, so my 5 activities that nourish me are time by the ocean, the lake, or my swimming pool. Now I have a swimming pool. I can sit out there daily. It's not always warm enough to sit out there daily, so that might not be nourishing all the time. But I don't live by a lake or the ocean, a mountain, lake, or the ocean. But I know from time to time that I want to get there, that those things fill my soul. So maybe I'm intentional every few months getting some time by those places that aren't right in my backyard. Daily movement. This is a non-negotiable for me. Whether it's a restful stretch in yoga, Pilates, lifting weights, moving my body in a really fast moving HIIT workout or sit workout, or some kind of really intense cardio. Every day is a little, I don't do all of those every day, but each day I do something to move my body, to kind of move out any tension. It's also very meditative for me. Sometimes some of my best ideas will come when I'm in a workout and my mind is settled and I'm just really honed in and I've cleared out all of the other stuff and made room and space for other ideas to come to surface. It's very often for me to be on a long walk and have something come up. Travel is another activity that nourishes me. I don't travel all the time, every day. So this is another example of one that it's not going to be in my itinerary every day, but I know it's something important. I really try to be intentional once or twice a year. And we travel quite a bit. I'm very, fortunate, and also just kind of the nature of our lives and our jobs and where our kids live and families all over. So there is travel, but that travel, making sure that travel is also travel that is fun travel that we enjoy and not always for a specific reason or job or event. So I'm intentional about that. Going to the movies. Now, this is a number one for my husband, and it's become one for me more over time, where it's just, and I especially love doing it with him because it's such a great therapeutic thing for him. So going to the movies, listening to music and singing along. If you are driving alongside me going down the road, it's very likely you're going to see me jamming to some kind of song, unapologetically in my car. I'm getting ready to go to the Brandy Carlisle concert tomorrow night. So I've got my pill, Beats pill speaker out. I am jamming to the set list. So I'm ready to go, ready to sing, but I love music. I can think of all the different seasons of my life and have different songs that come up for me. So that's something. And the thing about music is when you talk about, oh gosh, I don't have any time. Well, when you're driving to and from work, or you've dropped the kids off at school, or you're driving to and from, you're taking care of your parents, or any of those scenarios, run into the store to run some errands, you can be jamming to your music and really get refreshed that way. So these are things that they're all types of things that require different amounts of time and commitment, but they're all activities that nourish me. And I know paying attention to that and making sure that at least one or two of these is something that's part of my daily regimen, that's in my schedule, non-negotiable, doesn't get moved, that I'm using to take care of myself. So and it might be a 10-minute quiet time sitting outside in my car when I'm driving to a meeting. Or it might be at the end of the day or in the middle of the day on my lunch break when I've got a break in between meetings and recordings. But I know every day that I'm going to get that in. For me, it's not as important. I used to set a time, like at this time, I'm going to do it. I'm so committed to moving my body every day. I know I won't let the day go by without moving my body. It's that important to me. It's that therapeutic for me. So you really have to kind of determine when you're trying to set this as a new habit. Sometimes it's good to okay, tomorrow morning, 5:30 a.m. every morning, that's in my calendar. Or after work, I go directly there. Or on my lunch break, I do this. Or on my way to work, I'm listening to this music. I'm having this quiet time. When I get home, I'm sitting in the garage for 15 minutes and just letting everything settle before I go in and deal with the evening, whatever it is. And if you feel like you need to have it in that calendar or have it in your phone as an alarm to remind you, do that and do whatever it is you need to do. Have an accountability partner. There's a lot of different ways, but make sure you make that time for those activities that nourish you. And tracking this from time to time, because this is one of those things that may change in different seasons. I move my body differently than I did 5, 10, 15 years ago. My music taste has changed. So my, and has evolved and grown. So my lists that really get me going are different and changed. I've moved around the country a lot. So my proximity to nature and the types of nature that I'm close to is different depending on where I live. So paying attention to those things as they evolve and grow, but having those activities that nourish you, that you can fall back on. And it may determine, like each day you may listen to your body and be like, I know I'm supposed to go on that 5-mile walk today, but I think a yoga stretch is going to serve me better based on how I'm feeling, or I didn't sleep very well, or I had a really stiff, tight, really rigorous workout and I really need to stretch myself out. So being willing to be flexible within that, but finding those things and knowing every day you've got some non-negotiables, that it's time for you to refill your cup and refill those resources so you can show up fully present, fully resourced, tapping from an overflow, not from an empty cup. Let me get that spit out. And then the last question I want you to ask yourself is 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months. So based on what you've learned about yourself and who you are and the activities that nourish you, and looking at your calendar to make sure those things are a priority, that you're fitting those in, and that your calendar really is aligning with who you are. And you're learning, and we'll talk about this in other episodes about the power of a no when you're making space in your calendar. But today I really want you to just focus in on these 3 questions. So 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months. And so writing those down. So for me, for example, energized, open, safe, welcome, seen. So I've identified, okay, how am I contributing to that? Am I engaged in spaces and places and with people that are going to be welcoming places for this to come to be? Or do I need to make some shifts there? But it's not as simple as just, oh, this is how I want to feel. Okay, but how are you participating in that? What are you doing to enable that and bring that to be? And that is, and so looking at those, okay, energize. What do I need to feel energized? Well, I need to make sure I'm getting enough sleep. I need to make sure I'm finding ways that move my body. Not everybody loves exercise. So it might just be getting out in nature. It might be dance. It might be, there's a lot of swimming. I mean, there's a lot of different ways we can move our body. Even if you don't consider yourself someone who likes exercise or athletic, there's, having a dance party with yourself. That's great exercise. So if you love music, you love dance, you love theater, I mean, whatever those things are. But thinking, okay, how can I contribute to what's going to make me feel energized? I want to feel open. What can I do to contribute to that? What's getting in my way of feeling open? Are there some things that I need to unpack with that I need to relearn and unlearn? Have I had some past experiences that have made me not feel safe enough to be open? And then safe. I want to feel safe. Okay, how am I feeling safe right now? If I'm not, what's inhibiting that? Getting really curious. I want to feel welcome. Okay. Again, am I not feeling welcome anywhere? If not, why am I in the right spaces? Does my circle of people, are they people who are for me? Am I being, cognitive that, aware of that, and then feeling seen? Well, to feel seen, part of feeling seen is being willing to speak up and be heard. To want to be seen and then just sit there and be quiet and kind of try to blend in a room, you're not really contributing to you being seen. And if you are contributing, again, it goes back to what spaces are you going into? Are you in spaces that are in alignment with you, that are in support of you? Are there some things that you need to unpack and unlearn about being seen? Are your words, are you talking in I statements when you talk about the things that you want for yourself? Or are you expecting everyone else to change? When realizing we're not responsible for others, we're responsible for ourselves. And part of that responsibility is surrounding ourselves with people that are healthy, but also it starts with us doing the work to making sure we're healthy and showing up in a healthy way for others. So really being intentional as you look at these words about how you can contribute to it to make this possible, to make this come to be. So within that, I want you to really see, going back to these three questions and see how they connect and see what they connect to. You're identifying who you are. You're identifying ways that fill your cup. You're identifying how you want to feel. This is really giving you a foundation of who you are, and it's going to give you insights to other areas like what you value, what your values are, what kind of spaces light you up, where you might need to communicate some healthy boundaries and expectations because of these values that have come up, because of you realizing who you are. And then, oh gosh, this is how I see myself. This is who I am. But yet I'm showing up in these spaces that don't really align with that. And maybe I need to make some decisions here. So just making those connections and seeing, it's all about that information too that you can get from it to help you make informed decisions moving forward. So from here, and like I said, this is all information. This is going to give you really great information in the coming weeks as we dive into these different topics of, okay, prioritizing self-care. I know what nourishes me now. Confidently setting boundaries. Oh, I've become aware based on these three questions I've asked where I might need to set some healthy boundaries. I might, taking care of our emotional health, mental health, spiritual health, physical health. I'm seeing that when I show up in spaces that are out of alignment, it really impacts these different parts of my mental, emotional health. And that can really show up physically as a headache or a stomach ache when I'm walking into a space or place that I really don't want to be in. I'm there out of obligation, not because I really want to be there and I feel alignment with it. This is a really strong action in supporting ourselves. When we support ourselves with knowing who we are and grounding ourselves in that, knowing what nourishes us and making that a regular part of our daily lives, and knowing how we want to feel over time and knowing what we need to do to contribute to that, we're then much more open to others, and seeing how we can show up for them healthy, and also in being curious about them rather than judgmental, because we've taken the time to be curious about ourselves. It really opens up that world for us, and how we do this, and what makes us feel supported. And inviting other people to think about what makes them feel supported. It starts with us. For us to operate healthy in the world, we must start operating healthy within ourselves. And that, I think, really starts with, embracing those layers that we talked about last week, and answering these key questions really lays the foundation for the rest of this. So I hope that you found this, helpful and insightful today. I hope that it gave you that kind of gateway into who you are that maybe you haven't thought about for a while, or that you need to revisit, or that you've never thought about, and the power that has and the information it gives you. I want to remind you to go through these activities. Stay curious rather than judgmental. Be very patient with yourself, very compassionate with yourself. And like I said, if you need any additional support, I'm here. Go to the contact form on embracinglayers.com and let's talk. But I'm hopeful that this will give you a great start. It's also a great icebreaker with other people to ask them these three questions rather than going into these different events we have for work or social or whatever and asking, oh, when you're meeting somebody, oh, what do you do? Oh, what fills you up? What fills your cup? What activities do you engage in that are really nourishing for you? What makes you light up in the morning when you get up? What are you passionate about? Really kind of maybe shifting. It's an interesting, different way to get to know people and really get to know who they are, not just through who they are, not just what they do. So I hope you found this informative and helpful and supportive. Remember, you are valuable, you are worthy, and you get to choose. Take care, and I'll see you next time here on the Field Podcast. Hello, and thank you so much for being with us today on this episode of the Feel Podcast. If you would like more information on how you can apply these talking points that I share with our guests in each episode to your own life, really utilize this Feel framework, go to embracinglayers.com, fill out our contact form, and let's set up a free 30-minute consultation to talk about how you can start living your most authentic, organic, healthy, feel-fueled life. Thanks again for being with us today. We'll be back to you soon with another episode here on the Feel Podcast.